Hey everyone, my name is Will. I am the host of the Havenscope podcast and also the president of Havenscope. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about the Old Guard.
Who are you?
You can call me Andy.
I lead a group of soldiers. Fighters, like you. With an extremely rare skill set.
What do you mean? Mother?
Let's just say we're very hard to kill.
The Old Guard is a science fantasy fiction film and a little bit in the superhero genre. It came out in 2020 on Netflix, specifically just to streaming. It's directed by Gina Prince Bythewood, and it was actually written originally as a comic series by Greg Rucka, and he also did the screenplay for it. And on today's episode, I have one Rochelle Lawrence and Alyssa Fohl. How you guys doing today?
So good. Pretty good.
All right. To just kind of get into the swing of things, what did you guys think of the movie?
I loved it. I've seen it like 5 times. It's a fan favorite for me personally.
I give it like a 7 out of 10. I think it's like a good film. Definitely very Netflix. I don't know if that makes sense. This is a movie that seems like it would be on Netflix and like not out in theaters, but it isn't terrible.
Well, would it surprise you to hear it has a budget of $70 million, that kind of thing?
That's actually a crazy budget.
That's actually kind of that nowadays, especially with stuff
You
like
think that's cheap?
Nowadays, yes, that is well within. Well, okay, in the context of streaming, that's a lot of money, especially for something that's not going to go to the box office. When you look at a bunch of other movies, especially Marvel movies or like these other modern blockbusters, those things are hitting like $200 to $300 million budgets, and almost in a way, they are costing way much more than they actually look in a lot of ways. Like I don't know if you guys saw that recent Indiana Jones film. That was something in the ballpark of like $350 to $400 million. Part of that is because it got very expensive to shoot during COVID and a bunch of CGI, but also just kind of very much a victim of, let's just say, budgets that have been swelling up a lot the past like 5 years and not necessarily looking like it a lot.
I don't know if this looks like a $70 million budget. Like, I feel like I could have filmed some of this. I don't know. Okay, that was a little far, maybe.
No, you're good, you're good. I haven't even given my own thoughts on the movie yet. But that'll be an interesting thing for us to segue into later, though, which is, like, this idea of, like I'm sure all of us have heard the phrase direct-to-DVD, that kind of thing. What does that even mean nowadays when we have stuff like these streaming services that are making movies that are this big a budget, even if in the context of other stuff they're kind of smaller? But, like, what does that mean in terms of, like, quality or what we expect out of a movie nowadays? But before we get a little bit into that, I will also say I enjoyed the movie for what it is. I wasn't, like, I wasn't, like, fully, like, engrossed in it necessarily. I think there's some interesting ideas in what they do here that I kind of wish they had made the movie about that instead of what we got here originally. Like, I honestly would have really dug if this had been more of a historical piece and it wasn't modern day. And then, like, we actually saw a little bit of them, like, through, like, hey, we see some of the Crusades, we see some of these, like, medieval time periods that they're in. Instead of it
started like that.
Right? Yeah. Like, and I bring that up because they're actually, the funny thing is that, Rochelle, I don't know if you know this, but this was, like I said in the intro, it's actually originally a graphic novel series by Greg Rucka. That's how it started out as. So technically, calling it a superhero film does work because it kind of is a superhero film. It's based off of comic books, that kind of thing. I've gotten to look at the first issue. It does mostly start how the movie does go, surprisingly. That probably helps because he wrote the screenplay for the film, that kind of thing. But
are they coming out with a second one?
There is already a sequel that has been greenlit. Who knows when it'll come out?
Really?
Because I think there's been, like, some, because obviously it's like stuff gets greenlit. Still having COVID issues. There was the writers' strike, the actors' strike. That's pushing stuff back, obviously. I think there's a different director this time around. But it very much is, obviously, as we can tell from the end of the film, it's very clearly set up for a sequel in the first place. Right. But, like, to get back to my thoughts and, like, kind of what I wish they maybe did sometimes was that I feel like it just, setting it in the modern day, that's kind of how the comic does start out. But I kind of wish we had seen just more of like that the historical factor of it, because it does feel a little been there done that of like, here's like secret society, secret group, that kind of thing that's like in the shadows in modern day, that kind of thing. I think it would have been a little bit funner to like to show it from like that medieval like standpoint, or like those more historical battles, because when they flash back to those were like, to me that just seemed like a more, that was the story I wanted to see.
Yeah, like more interesting than just
Like, well, here's the thing, I like, because that's the idea though, is I like the ideas they put on here, and I want them to explore more of that in, if that sequel is like, I guess we'll see how much into production it fully is or something like that, if it's still in flux, that kind of thing. But it's the type of stuff that I would like to see, especially because of like, there are some horrifying like ideas brought up in the movie, such as the one woman, it starts with a Q, I believe was her name, Quaif or something.
Like from the back then.
Yeah, it was the woman that
she drowned.
Yeah, that that they encased her in like
Still
the metal
there.
coffin and they put her in the ocean. Well, not if you've seen the end of the movie. Not if you've seen the end of the movie. She got out somehow.
Who
but-
knows?
But like it's stuff like that I did enjoy. It's like those concepts of like, oh, that would be completely and utterly horrifying to be trapped in a metal cage, dying over and over for basically hundreds and hundreds of years.
I didn't even think about it like that, because they were like, oh yeah, like she's miserable, and I was like, oh, like she can never die. Then I realized like she does.
Yeah, they still get hurt. They still get hurt.
She's drowning,
Over
waking
and
up,
over.
drowning, waking up, drowning for 200 years straight, or more than that.
I think they might have said like 500
Yeah,
at that point.
that's ridiculous.
It's very horrifying. The only thing I would love, there's the weird aspect to the movie of them talking about how like it'll be your time eventually to die. So there's like this kind of like idea of fate
I
and
thought
destiny.
the main character was gonna die.
Yeah, no, I
Eventually, like now, she's like
yeah, she seemingly isn't even one of them anymore. She is just
Andy?
mortal.
yeah,
Yeah,
she's
Andy.
human now,
Yeah.
quote unquote.
Like I thought they were honestly gonna play it off as like a passing of the torch to it's Nile. I believe Niles was the she's the
The new girl.
introductory character for this.
Mhm.
Yeah, the former Marine. I honestly thought they were gonna pass it off to her. That like they were gonna basically make her like, hey, I'm gonna actually like Charlize Theron's character was actually gonna die, and they would pass it on to her mostly. But ultimately, stripping her of the power, I guess, makes more sense for like kind of how they were trying to portray her character arc in the movie, because she is kind of basically like, she doesn't think she's done any good for humanity, that kind of thing. She's basically tired and doesn't even kind of want to do anything anymore before that kind of like transitions back towards the end of the film. It kind of realizes the good that she's done, that kind of thing, but also has a different outlook on it because she's been stripped of that. But that doesn't mean she should stop, that kind of thing.
I also think it would have been cool if they showed like, they had that one scene where they're talking about how they all like died, like how they all kind of figured out they had these. Like I think it would have been cool to like show each individual's person like how they were figured out they were immortal.
Like their origin story.
Yeah.
That would have been cool.
And then like bring them all together.
I think that would have definitely helped for me, because I think
I liked seeing like the introduction character
yeah.
get
Her
like,
death was
Yeah.
that was
Bit brutal. That was a nice thing though, is because of the fact this movie was
I thought she was dead.
she was.
Well, the nice thing about that though is it kind of brings up the advantage of this being a streaming movie and not necessarily something that went to theaters. Because if this went to theaters, even though it's $70 million, and like I said, it's a little bit lower for big budget blockbusters nowadays. For $70 million, a studio would absolutely come in and tell you need to make this PG-13, so there would be no blood. We would basically not see anything actually coming out of them like we do in the movie. Like in a certain way, because of the fact they were actually able to just put this on streaming, they didn't have to worry about that type of like
That is
rating
kinda
system
nice,
that a
yeah.
lot of movies have to deal with. So you actually get to see blood come out of someone when they get shot, which you don't see in a lot of PG-13
See someone
movies.
get shot in the head.
Yes, you get to see
Oh,
bloody
yeah.
guts everywhere. Even though the movie doesn't really feel like an R-rated movie at all, because they kind of just it's not, the gore isn't the point still, because there are some movies
Right.
that like they kind of just go for gore and it's like
I guess I was kind of thrown off how like I guess gory it was.
yeah.
But then I realized like yeah, it is like a Netflix film, because I don't personally really watch a lot of I don't do blood. So
Yeah.
I don't really watch a lot of movies like with blood and stuff. I didn't realize how much there would be.
Yeah.
But it's not like terrible actually.
It's not excessive. It's just
Yeah.
like the right amount to get the point across.
It's enough for that.
To show
Yeah.
like the injuries to the extent to like how far they can be like.
Yeah.
One has to admire Mr. Copley's attention to detail. Those shoes were a particularly grotesque touch.
I knew this was gonna happen. I said it.
We did it right, Andy. For the right
And
reason.
what did it get us, Nikki? What?
But that is one thing though to bring up, just the idea that like, if they were going to put this out in theaters, they probably would have had to clean that stuff up. They would have had to make it fully PG-13 in the sense that like no blood, no showing anything like that. And while this isn't like important to the story, it's definitely one of those things that a lot of filmmakers have to deal with that can be frustrating. Is like, okay, you got to tone this down for this rating because we want to make our money back. Because if it's rated R, it's not going to make that much money, even though that's kind of there's some truth to it in the sense that like you are lowering the scale of your audience, but at the end of the day, plenty of R-rated movies have made hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yeah.
But it's a nice thing to look at this as a streaming film, and that it had that advantage to like kind of give them a little bit more freedom in what they can actually show on screen.
I feel like it being on Netflix was like the perfect place for it to be. If it went out on any other platform, I don't think people would. Well, I don't know how popular it is, but I don't think people would appreciate it as much.
Netflix is definitely it's definitely one of the most popular. I think Amazon just recently, that Roadhouse movie did very well for them, but that's like, even in comparison to Netflix, they're still kind of growing
Amazon
their
has
stuff.
ads now, and that pisses me off because why?
Hey, Netflix has a tier of ads. They just added that. That would be unthinkable like 10 years ago.
When did Netflix get ads?
It's like the lowest tier, I believe now. It's because they want more. They want
I think
more
they're gonna
money.
lose more viewers by doing that.
Because they already lost viewers with the
They lost me
whole,
for a
like,
little bit.
password thing. That was
Oh
crazy.
my gosh, you can't watch it on certain devices. I
Yeah.
can't stand that.
You know, they added ads to the lowest tier, which I believe is like the $6 or $7 one. It might be slightly higher by now because they all keep going up. But I mean, not to just not talk about the movie for that, but that's the kind of thing that a lot of these services are going through, is the idea that like a lot of these services came out and they were very cheap because they wanted to get people in, because they saw growth and they saw just exponential money, and that is clearly not happening. So now they're kind of realizing we're spending hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars on these movies, and then we're also putting them in on these streaming services, and we're not getting as much money back as we want to. There's a little bit of it just not being this type of thing not being self-sufficient enough. But even with these very large budgets, there's still the idea that it is value to the service that's bringing people to it, because you're still putting this stuff out. Maybe you're not putting them out in theaters, maybe you're not making that box office, but it's still content at the end of the day for like Netflix to put out there, that kind of thing.
That's true.
Yeah, I agree.
And Hulu and Disney Plus merged. Now, did you see that?
Yeah, like what's the point of having Disney for kids if you're also gonna have like movies on there from Hulu that your kid could click on?
I think they still have a they still have an ability to limit it if it's like a kid's profile, that kind of thing, so they don't see anything that's like R-rated or anything like that.
Like I was on Disney Plus the other day and I was like, I don't think this should be on Disney Plus.
That's literally what I'm watching Scandal on right now, and I'm like, Scandal should not be on Disney Plus.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy.
Yeah, we went off from the movie. Let's.
Oh yeah. We can segue a little bit back to the movie. But Rochelle, what are your favorite aspects about this movie? What has made you come back to it? Is it the plot? Is it the characters? Is it like this world and like the ideas that they've set up in it?
It's definitely the plot. I just like that supernatural, like immortal type vibe. I really like even like superhero type. I just like that. Being immortal, if I could have a superpower, that would be it. Like,
are you sure though?
I'm 100%
After seeing the girl
sure.
get thrown in the water.
What about like friends and family though?
I
what
don't
about
care about them.
Oh, okay. What you're gonna say?
I really don't.
Okay.
She cares, guys. She
Like
cares.
being immortal, you can live so many lives.
Yeah.
You can experience so many things. You
It's
can
like
you can do everything.
that movie of that girl that got hit by the car or something, and she like
I have no idea.
or she like started dating the son to the guy she was dating in her past life.
Age of Adeline. Yep.
Adeline.
Oh, I have
love
not.
that
I have
movie.
not seen that movie.
You need to watch that movie.
Yeah,
It's
she,
really
like-
good.
She gets hit by a car and dies.
Yeah, the car gets struck by lightning, and it
Oh,
stops
yeah.
her from aging.
So she's not really immortal.
When did this
Yeah.
movie come out?
It's like
I don't know. But it's really good.
2017.
We should have watched that.
Yeah,
I
it's
kinda
really
forgot
good.
about it.
Huh.
And she like walks
I've
in.
heard of it. I didn't. I had no idea it was about that.
Yeah, and she like realized she was dating the guy that she was dating's father, she dated in her like past life.
That part was okay.
That's
that
kinda
we're
like-
not talking about.
yeah.
That movie. Damn it.
But okay, so you're a fan of the immortal aspect
Yeah.
of the movie, that kind of idea of like, it's kind of a little bit interesting because you have characters that can't die obviously until later in the
Right.
film. So how do you create tension? How do you create stakes? That kind of stuff. Like,
I feel like they created the tension because they gave away that part where it's like, but you can die. We've seen somebody
Yeah.
die.
Dot.
Yeah.
You know, like.
Because she's like, well, our buddy, like, he did die.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And every time they die, they're like, they do like a count off thing, like, oh, are you still alive? Are you still alive? Like,
yeah,
I like that.
it's one of those. It's definitely funny when you think back though, because that means if Niles had actually managed to kill her in the plane scene, she would have just been dead.
That's true.
Yeah.
Oh, that would have been a little bit underwhelming for the rest of the movie.
Did they ever talk about, I kind of missed this part in the beginning, why she took a year off? Andy, why did the main character take a year off? And then
I think that's just to imply that she has that weariness about what
Yeah.
they've been doing
okay.
and
I
how
didn't
it's
know if there
affecting the
was, like, a
world.
She was
reason.
just tired of doing what they were doing.
Yeah, a feeling like they haven't been making an impact.
Yeah.
Like how it's Copley, I believe, is the one, basically the former CIA agent. How he later shows them like, hey, you guys have made a difference, even if it doesn't feel like it. Your actions kind of like
Yeah.
spread out in this web that
I
like
think
cascade.
they also could have touched on the girl that was in the military or
Yeah, Niles.
the Niles, yeah, or the army, whichever one it was. But I don't know the difference.
I think just saying Marines
Military.
works.
Marines,
I'm honestly
sure.
not
No,
100%
I
sure
think
either.
that is what she was.
Yeah,
a
it was
Marine.
Marines. Yeah.
And I feel like they could have touched back because they like wanted her to like go get checked up on stuff. They never even came back to that whole part of her life and like
Yeah.
showed like where did she go? Like she went missing. Like they never even showed anybody worrying about her.
That's what they were like, oh, yeah, you can't go back. You can't call them. You can't do anything.
Yeah, I would have thought like I kind of was waiting for them to like be like where'd she go? Like trying to like look for her, but nobody really came looking for her.
I think for me that was one of the parts about the movie I thought was a little bit weaker. Was I kind of wish we had stayed with her a little bit longer
Right.
before she kind of just got
Get more
like
like a connection with
yeah,
her.
before Andy had like come and pretty much kidnapped her to have him join them.
Shot her in the head.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I feel like if they grew our connection like closer with Niles and then like killed her off and then like we were like, oh my gosh, but then we saw her like come back to life.
Right.
I feel like it would have like her death would have like hit different because like I didn't really care.
Like I would have wanted to see her maybe go back to her family, and then maybe that's where they have the like pharmaceutical like company come into play, where like they try to maybe kidnap her family, or like they found out some way about her, and that's when Andy comes into play. Because as it is now, they have like that dream connection, which obviously a lot of the complaints we might say these might just be how the comic is written, and since the same dude who did the comics wrote the movie, this is seemingly what he wanted to get out there. But yeah, ultimately, I kind of wish there'd been a little bit more push or pull for her, that we got to see like more upfront with like maybe with her like she has to like leave her family behind because she realizes that in the moment she needs to leave with them. Because as it is now, she does kind of get kidnapped and then kind of accepts it for
kind of okay with it.
Yeah, like
in a weird way.
I think the dream part, I really like that part too. Like,
yeah, that they can like see her
yeah,
in their dreams. That was pretty cool.
that's like a connection no one else has in this world.
yeah.
Who are you? I lead a group of immortals. An army, I guess. Soldiers, fighters like you. Look. You've got questions, kid. I get it.
I do have a favorite quote from this
Oh,
movie.
you do? Ooh,
but-
favorite
Ooh.
quote from Alyssa. Let's see
But
what you
it
got.
was kind of towards the end of the movie, so I don't know if we want to get in.
No, you're good. We can talk about pretty much anything. Like go
So-
right off.
I liked Andy. Well, I kind of was like, oh, she wants to be different so bad and hide that she wasn't healing. And then she like went off to go get
Never
help.
Oh yeah, the scene with the woman at the
Yes.
store that like helps like stitch her up.
And she says, today I put this on your wound. Tomorrow you help someone up when they fall.
Mm.
And I was like, I really
That's
like
some
that.
bars right there.
Yeah, I like that.
It's a nice little scene to show Andy that like, hey, you should still keep trying
Yeah,
for this. You
right.
should still try to help people
I'm
because
like, I'm nosy. I would have asked her what happened. This girl like kept her cool. She's just like, if you need help, like I got you. And like it almost showed like not everybody in the world was out to get her, because
Yeah.
they didn't go into like public places and they hid a lot and like
Didn't take pictures.
right, like she deleted the picture off
Yeah.
that girl's phone. Like
Which would still be there, by the way. She should have gone into the deleted
Recently.
section. Otherwise, that person could totally find that photo.
Because they would. I would personally. I would have been like,
where did it go?
You took a pic. I took a picture first. I took a selfie facing this way.
Yeah.
Why isn't it not in my phone?
Also, I do like towards the end of the film, they kind of reveal that they're actually kind of bad at covering their tracks because the co-play dude they have so many photos of them
Cameras
actually being
everywhere
there.
too.
Like, you think it would be that they're having more trouble in the modern day, but it seems like they were already kind of found out in like a conspiracy-like way for hundreds of years.
They did no effort of really trying to hide their tracks. I didn't see them like change their identities once, really.
Yeah, I thought that part was a little funny because I understand what it was like implying about it, and obviously if anyone in real life were to put that stuff together, it would look like a conspiracy thing. But it was kind of funny that they highlighted her deleting that photo in the beginning, when in reality they've kind of already been caught or discovered so many
They were on
times.
camera the whole beginning of the movie.
I have like a hot take. I hate redemption arcs.
Ooh,
I really do hate them in every movie.
Define redemption arc.
You mean for Booker or
Yes.
Book? What his name was? It Bookie?
Not
because he set her up.
Or do you mean Coplay, the CIA?
Co-play.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
I hate redemption arcs. Like,
Aw.
if you do something to me, I am not forgiving you. I'm sorry. You can be as good a person as you want to be. You can save me from whatever. I'm not forgiving you. No. I don't like that.
So what part are you referring to? How they like were okay with the guy at the end of the movie, or how her
Yes.
buddy set her up?
Both.
See,
Bookie is a bad person. Is that his name? I don't know.
Book.
I think it's like Bookie or
Booker?
Booker or something like
Yeah.
that. See, the thing with the Coplay dude is, while for him, I feel like they haven't really forgiven him because they do basically imply, hey, we're not asking you, we're telling you. Like, he's not like their prisoner, but like they're just saying like, you are going to do this stuff for us. You're going to help us cover our
They
tracks
wanted a
from now
job,
on.
right? Or
It's
something?
kind. I think he's like the dude that will keep their
Yeah.
tracks clean from
So
now
it doesn't
on.
happen again.
Yeah,
Because he's the only one that knows, or something.
Not the only one that knows.
because he's
but, like,
ex-CIA and he's
yeah.
already been able to like find that information, that kind of stuff like that.
And he has the power
But-
to cover their tracks, basically.
Yeah. So
Co-play?
Coplay.
He was like kind of good though.
Here's the thing: that he was trying to be good for the wrong reasons, though.
I saw the good.
I thought it was going to be revealed that he wanted to bring his wife back to life, but it was more just that he's like the there's the chart with like the 26 different types. There's like the chaotic neutral. There's the good neutral. He's like he's like the good version of the pharma dude if he was just trying to do it for good reasons, but it's still bad because like the funny thing is he was only like kind of not into it once they revealed that they were going to still experiment on Andy, even though she wasn't immortal, because he had to have known by then that they're just torturing them for eternity at that point. So the fact that he's just like, oh, but she's not immortal, you're gonna let her go free, right? It's like, no. It's like, dude, what do you think they've been doing to the other two that they've had this whole time?
He almost like kind of felt bad, but he like didn't do anything to like help his feelings, I guess. I don't know. I hate when like movies, not necessarily this one, but it just like kind of reminded me. I hate when movies like get you to really like somebody and then they're like, oh, he's actually a bad guy. They didn't really do that in this one, but it just like reminded me of it, and I can't stand when movies do that.
Yeah, because they kind of have they try that twist with the book or Bookie whatever.
They tried to get us to not like him, and I was like, I'm already so deep. Like,
It's such a quick twist that they quickly already flip back on its head, because it's like by the very next scene he's already like, I messed up, I shouldn't have done this. Like they needed to let that
like
linger.
follow through with your decision.
Or like show him planning it.
Right.
Like they technically exile him at the end of the film, but also like, don't you guys need his help? Like wouldn't he be really useful?
Yeah,
still?
why did
like,
he like go off on his own again?
To someone
They'd,
who's
like, exile
immortal,
him.
what's 100 years? Or
True.
I think it was 1,000.
I think it's 100.
100. To someone
Did they
who's
ever say how
immortal.
old she was?
Yeah.
How old? Was she?
No, not how old. Just like how long he would stay out.
Yeah, when
I
they
wanna
exile
know
him at the
how.
end of the film, they tell him like, come back here in 100 years. They're technically exiling him there. But
Yeah.
in my head, it's like,
That's his punishment.
yeah, like you guys can be annoyed, you still probably need his help. Like,
Well, and now he found.
What's her name?
Yeah.
it starts with a Q. I cannot remember. I don't want to butcher any more names because like the actor who played Coplay, I'm not even going to attempt his name. I tried to remember it before the beginning of this film. He's an amazing actor. He should be in more stuff. Cannot pronounce his name. I'm not going to butcher it live on air.
It's okay. we know who you're talking.
We know what you mean.
We can
Well,
insert pictures.
right.
This
Insert
is
picture
who
here.
we're
I just have a
talking
picture
about.
talking right about him.
We both did it to this side. Let's. Okay.
Oh, perfect shot right there.
He's in the middle of the pyramid, actually.
Mr. Copley.
Monsieur Booker. Bonjour. It's a pleasure to finally meet you.
Last time I checked, you had to be American to be in the CIA.
I was born in Boston. Moved to London when I was 3.
So why did you leave the agency, Mr. Copley?
My wife got sick.
Let's see. Speaking of the characters, though, one of the I would have liked to see more of the group kind of just doing, like, I understand where they're coming from, where the group is getting a little bit, like, I guess it's more Andy, like, jaded at what they're doing, that stuff. I would have liked to see the camaraderie between them a little bit more, and that's kind of why I kind of wish it was set more in the past, because they're kind of going at a breakneck pace to get them caught up to they're being hunted, to be experimented on, that kind of thing.
Right.
And I
would
feel
have
like
liked to see that too, like Andy and that girl's relationship.
yeah,
Because
back
they were
then.
the big two,
yeah, the first
3.
two.
big 3. Yeah, I forgot about him.
Like that little flashback itself could just be an entire movie.
Right.
And
It would have been fired.
I almost feel like that would have been a more interesting movie to me.
Mm-hmm.
But I also understand there's a lot of, like, it's following how the comic is seemingly set up, and maybe maybe a second movie would be kind of like that, where it
Imagine
kind of
this.
flashes back and forth a little bit.
They have it at the end. Like, let's say they made a whole different movie.
Yeah.
Right.
It was them in the beginning, the big 3, R.I.P. our king, and then she goes in the water. They never showed how Andy escaped. I would have liked to see that, but
That's
in
true.
this made-up movie that I'm making up, Andy escapes. She lives on the modern life, and then she finds her friend.
See,
I think that would have been cool.
I almost thought she was gonna Andy's friend, the one who got trapped in the water coffin. I almost thought that was gonna be a twist near the end of
Yeah.
the film, that she was working for the other people. But it obviously, once it started coming to that, like, not really post-credit sequence, but that very ending sequence
Or
when he comes back,
When
it was like,
Niles
oh yeah,
had a
this is
dream.
sequel.
Right. Niles is connected to the one in the water. You know what I find interesting? Why did she go to Dude instead of going to the group? You know what I mean? Like, if you can find him, you can find the group.
You mean Copley, when she found Copley near
Yeah.
the end? Well, he's still technically, he was really the only one that knew where they were, though. Like, it doesn't seem like the dreams, like, once they've met, they kind of mention that they kind of, like, go away-ish. So it doesn't really seem like they can use that for, like, actual tracking.
No, not that, but like, how did she find Copley?
She kind of just it's when, because remember, she leaves, she realizes that Book has seemingly betrayed them because she has a gun that doesn't have
wait.
any bullets.
I've
then
been
she
saying
comes-
the wrong name.
She was talking about the.
Yeah, like the ending scene. How did the girl in the water
not-
find?
Oh, well,
Book?
that's
that's
I've been
just
saying the wrong name.
that's just sequel bait. That's sequel teaser stuff to be like, that is, a writer wrote that down because they knew they will find a way to explain it in the next one. They don't need to explain
if
it
they have
now.
a next one.
That's smart.
Yeah, I have to assume it'll probably be something that, like,
In like
because
5
they
years.
mentioned that she was looking for records of where she got, like, thrown and submerged. I feel like that wouldn't be useful hundreds and hundreds of years later, but it'll probably be something like that, where, like, oh, some fisherman fished her out, or like some ancient society
Right.
found her.
Imagine you pull something out the water and this girl just starts screaming. Like, what
That'd be crazy.
would you do?
They probably just pushed the box back in, honestly.
Personally,
In
yeah.
that box, let alone like her screaming in there, that box was creepy.
It was a very brutal scene. Like, to me, that was probably the brutalest.
Yeah,
the
and
most
that wasn't
brutal
even
scene
the
in the
most
entire movie.
brutal.
Well, in terms of gore, no, but just in terms of, like, actual, like, thinking
Torture.
about that, yeah, like that would be a horrifying
Or, like,
reality to experience.
Not
It's
to
a
get like
horrible way to
gruesome,
die.
just like them like hanging them and they're just like not dying. You're
Yeah.
like, God, just like imagine watching that.
Like-
Like any day now.
Like, that is the stuff
Have
about
you ever-
this that I liked the most, I would
Do
say.
you watch Rick and Morty?
Yeah.
Have you ever seen the scene where they like hanging the dragon?
No.
No.
I've not seen. See, we should have had Jeremiah on here. Jeremiah should have been on this episode. You could have talked about Rick and Morty.
She's lived with that guilt ever since, and she blames herself for Gwen's fate.
Why do you blame yourself? I lost a soldier.
Let's look at it from something we brought up earlier, this idea that it's a Netflix streaming movie, and obviously we've all heard of the term direct-to-DVD, that kind of thing. But when you think about a movie like that, even though like 70 million nowadays might not be a lot for a big blockbuster movie, like a direct-to-DVD movie is never going to be that. Was never going to have $70 million. But it's kind of funny that we look at like these movies nowadays as almost like that, because of the idea that like, oh, it's only on streaming. It's not in the it didn't get put in the box office. You didn't get to watch it in a theater, that kind of thing. But it's like this idea of like kind of how it used to be is like changed, even if like the movies in a certain way, they're not like, no matter what, I would not call this movie direct to DVD, even if I wasn't like the absolute biggest fan of it. Like there's still a pretty big quality gap in terms of what that stuff was and kind of still is. Like if you watch some like Hallmark movies or like,
I hate Hallmark movies.
or if you've seen the recent Megamind 2, which is an absolute disaster.
We will
not be discussing Megamind 2. That is an actual example of like a modern day direct to DVD nonsense that is bad. But it's still an interesting concept because like we've heard like other comments before. It's like it's a little bit like a Marvel movie. It's kind of like I expected this for like a Netflix movie. What does that to expand on that? What does that mean to you guys? Like, what is a Netflix movie? Like what?
Like the kissing booth.
Wait, what?
Unfortunately, I think Netflix has its own like theme.
Yeah.
Has its own rules
Very,
of filming, like
predictable.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's rule number 1.
So not going outside the box.
Right.
Right. They're not. They don't really. They like plot twists, but like kind of expected.
Plot twists.
Okay. So it's not even just like the production of the movie. It's kind of like
the production was fine. Like it was a good film.
Okay.
Like
because here's the thing. There has been word about like there is like some people out there that talk about it as like there is like a Netflix look for a lot of their stuff. That is a little bit.
They do have a Netflix look for most. So when I think of Netflix movies, I think of their cheesy little romance like shows and movies. This was a little different than what I've usually watched that Netflix has like made or like helped out, I guess. And most of like Netflix that I have seen, they have this tendency to just be cringy.
Yeah.
This wasn't cringy, which was nice.
Okay.
But usually like I find that it's cringy, or the actors that they choose are just like, I don't want to say they're bad, but like,
I don't know her name, but
like
whoever
Joey King?
yeah, I hate her. I'm sorry.
Like that's just like, I don't know. They don't put quality actors and actresses in their films. But this was like very different than most Netflix films I've seen. So honestly, this put my bar a little higher for them.
Okay.
And I think Netflix, they do a lot of like books and stuff and like comics. They like remake a lot of stuff. So it was pretty good.
Yeah, there was I don't know how well it'll pick up on camera, but you're wearing an Avatar: The Last Airbender shirt, correct?
I am.
Yeah, like that's one of the many things that Netflix has done. They did a One Piece live action. They've now done she's even showing us it. They've done a One Piece live action. They've done the Last Airbender live action. There's probably more coming at this point. Yep. The funny thing to think about though is that a lot of the stuff that goes on Netflix isn't necessarily made by Netflix. They tend to end up just being like the
place they fall on, I guess.
Yes, they buy the rights to like distribute the movie essentially. Whereas like some stuff like Stranger Things that is like funded by Netflix and stuff like that.
I don't find Stranger Things that cringy either. So when I'm saying like cringy and like bad actors, like I think I'm only thinking of like a certain genre because
you're thinking of stuff like The Kissing Booth.
Yes.
What's
like
that
Never
one?
Have I Ever.
The Letters. Tall Girl.
Yes, like that's a whole different genre of Netflix films. That is.
What's the one with the letters?
Oh, To All the Boys I Loved Before.
To All the Boys I Loved Before.
Would you guys almost, in a sense, think of those as like content movies, where it's like Netflix is kind of like, we can get 3 movies out of this. It did decent enough. Let's get 3 movies. We filled it out. We got more content.
7 after movies right now. I don't know if that's Netflix.
Like
I've never seen it. I was a Wattpad girly. Like I used to read that a lot, and I read the after book. I think I read the first one.
They've drug it on way too far. Yeah. And I think they also are trying to get actors and actresses like exposure with it, because like for example Joey King, I've never really seen her in anything until she was in The Kissing Booth. Yeah. Or like Noah Centineo, or the other guy, Jacob Elordi.
Oh, I probably wouldn't be able to know
like I feel like that's how they got their notice though. Yeah. Cause like now they're in like huge, like he's in Euphoria now. He was just Elvis.
Yeah.
And he started, like, I don't know if he started off in The Kissing Booth, but that's what I saw him in first. But it almost kind of does him dirty.
Yeah. It's the thing with Netflix for me is that it's obviously in any movie there's always a ton of hard work that goes into these productions to even make them, even if it's not something that you like the most or doesn't like go outside the box a lot.
Right.
But
right.
it's hard to not feel like sometimes that Netflix is just putting out what I would just consider content. We need
Right.
content, keep
They
people
could have
hooked,
done without some
that
of
that
them.
kind of thing.
Mhm.
And it also it doesn't the part about it that makes it feel bad to me is when you see that kind of stuff and then you see what they're like canceling, what they're not funding anymore, with the projects that they're looking after, because it doesn't really feel like Netflix is.
There was a Netflix original. I don't know if you ever heard of Grand Army.
I've
I
heard of it.
No, I don't think so.
Loved
Have you
that
heard of
show.
The Society?
Yes.
Bro, I used to love that.
They took off like a lot of bangers off Netflix, but are still keeping on these content things. So
I think
don't
it's
know
what
what
people
gets
watch.
watched,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's almost like, yeah, the Kissing Booth did get a lot of
Yep.
views and stuff, and it's almost iconic, but in a bad way.
Yeah.
It a lot of it feels very just, and this ultimately you could probably say this about most things and why they get made. A lot of it doesn't help these movies from not feeling like they're just metric driven, where it's like we're making this because it'll engage this user base, it'll get us this age group, this type of thing, this demographic. Like a lot of it
Yes.
doesn't feel like
Is Riverdale a Netflix series?
they're on Netflix. That might just be one of those things where like, cause they're made by, that's made by the CW. It might just like, if it doesn't have the little N like logo on it, that means Netflix doesn't technically own it. That kind of thing. That typically means Netflix bought the rights to it or they produced it
I've
and
never
they can put it on their
watched
platform.
Riverdale, but where I was getting at is I feel that Netflix does this thing where once they get like an actor or an actress, they kind of cling on to them and they want to put them in everything. I've seen I'm not even gonna try to say her name because I don't know how to say it, and I've seen this girl in like 5 different Netflix films, and I think they just like.
Is
the
it Millie
girl-
Bobby Brown from Stranger Things? She's
No,
been
but
in
she
a
is
lot
a
of
lot.
Netflix original movies.
No, I'm thinking of the girl from To All the Boys I Loved Before. But like even like Noah Centineo, they like got him and then they put him in a lot of stuff. Like once they figure out who people like, they will continuously use them. But it's like almost frustrating because they're playing like the same character in every movie.
Yeah.
That happened like 2010 too, when all the, do you know those type of movies like Divergent, The Maze Runner?
Oh, like the young adult
Yep.
dystopian movies.
Dystopian
I love
movies.
dystopian
That
movies,
happened with that genre first, and now it's happening again.
though. Yeah.
And if you try to touch their lives, well, they will get to learn your secret. They will beg you to share it with them, and you won't be able to. And they won't believe you, of course.
In a certain way, though, it's like a good and a bad thing for like we're talking about like these things being content, that kind of stuff. But in a lot of ways, you probably wouldn't see something like 10 years ago, or a little bit farther back than that. You probably wouldn't see something like a live action One Piece getting the push that it did on Netflix. So while we might be negative towards like these streaming services and like maybe what they're putting out there, what they're even like funding or like what they're using their money to buy,
Right.
in a lot of ways they are giving more chances to some stuff that might have not
Yeah.
had that
And
chance.
It's working in their favor. Like I know a lot of 12-year-olds that like these cringy movies. So like they are getting like their like fan base.
Because at the end of the day, if those cringy movies are getting
I
them
watched
money
them.
and if it's helping them fund other stuff that maybe other people are like enjoying
Yeah.
more, at the end of the day, is it like it's like a
All love to
dual-edged sword
Netflix.
almost. But I think the other part about it for me that can be a little bit like frustrating though sometimes is not to just get into another topic, but it's like the death of like stuff like physical media. Like if something is just a streaming service, it's like I know Netflix puts out like physical copies like Blu-rays, the DVDs of like some of their shows, but I don't think it's necessarily everything. One of the scary things to think about is that movies that are just being made for these streaming services, and we've seen it with stuff like on Max, aka formerly HBO Max or whatever
Like
it was
The
called before.
Idol?
Yeah. What we're seeing nowadays is we're seeing these shows and these movies that are just being removed, and there's no way, unless you pirate it, and I'm not advocating for piracy here. Just want to make that clear. No, we're not advocating for that. I'm just mentioning it. No, because the sad thing is a lot of these shows are being lost because they're being used for tax write-offs. Like there's been movies that have been made, like there was recently a couple years ago the Batgirl movie that was going to be on HBO Max. That was used as a tax write-off, and now that film can technically legally never be shown, even though it was completely filmed and
I
produced.
wonder if that's what happened to Grand Army, because I've tried to look it up on my.
It might have gone
secret
delisted.
streaming
It might have
service.
legitimately gone. It might have gone delisted or sold to someone else. But that's the
Yeah.
scary thing about a lot of these movies that are streaming only, is that they can just kind of be at the whim of these distributors like Netflix, like Disney Plus, and they can just kind of write it off. And then if there's no physical copies that exist anymore, there's nothing there unless it.
Right.
And the sad part is that is like, unfortunately, piracy is something that is keeping some of that stuff alive. And that's one of the like the scary things about this, because it's nice to have a streaming service. It's nice to just get on any computer, on your phone, pick up where you were watching, where you left off. But now the past couple of years, especially with HBO and how they've been going, we've been starting to see like the scary reality of them kind of
Or,
like
like-
delisting this stuff.
Like, wasn't The Office on Netflix?
Yes, but that's more of a case of it switching from from one service to the
But
other.
didn't it go on Peacock or something?
Well, here's the thing. The Office is made by NBC, and Peacock is NBC's streaming service, so it kind of makes sense that once Netflix's contract ran out, it moved over there.
I never heard of Peacock until Office came on it.
Well, see
Really?
that's what they wanted though. They didn't want to renew with Netflix because they had their own streaming service, and they knew that would make people go to them.
That
Like,
was years
because
ago,
that's
though.
you want to know some crazy stuff. Stuff like Seinfeld or in like Friends can like these contracts for those shows before like all of like pretty much before like all these companies started having their own services. Those contracts for these like streaming services would be like, hey, we're gonna pay you $200 million so that we can stream Friends exclusively on our service for like the next 5 years. That's how much money these series bring in. But obviously now that like a bunch of these companies have their own streaming services, once those contracts ended, they come off of that service and they move on to the other one.
Right.
The kind of stuff that I've been talking about, this delisting, is that it is gone. So unless they get sold to someone else, it's stuff that even Netflix has made, even Disney has funded and made. They just remove them, and there is no legal way to watch that stuff anymore if they didn't have a physical release. Like that stuff is
Yeah.
just vanished into the
kinda
ether.
scary.
That's
All that hard
scary,
work is gone.
because now I can be like, oh, I watched this show like 5 years ago,
can't prove
and
it.
no one else knows about it.
Yeah,
I
it's
feel like I have a lot of shows that I've watched before that nobody's heard of, but
None of it means anything anyway.
You said there were others. How many?
4.
You're an army of 4?
But yeah, the death of physical media is definitely one of those things that, like, when you look at a movie like this, especially to movies we've already watched, stuff like Blade Runner, which had a traditional theatrical release, put out on DVD, Blu-ray, Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Obviously, back then it was a little bit different. I kind of had to wait for like VHSs and stuff like that, but that's still physical media. Like, I have a nephew who's going to be turning 2 soon, and he's going to grow up in a world where, like, you've already seen it at some stores where like they're just getting rid of their like physical DVD and Blu-ray sections. Like
they need to bring back Redbox movies.
they still have those, thankfully, a little bit. I think Redbox has a little. They have their small corner of the market that seems to do well for them, because they
love
tend to get
Redbox.
newer movies and streaming services. But it is kind of the sad idea that like anything that's on streaming is not a guarantee that it's going to become physical. Like there are creators out there that have worked on productions, and it's like, yeah, my movie's on streaming, but like they're not doing like a physical version of it. Like,
Yeah,
so
we
if they
almost
take it
have,
off,
like-
it's gone.
We almost have like, I don't want to say like ancient items, but like I have like all the Ghostbusters on like VHS still. Like I will never get rid of those like that.
And that's something you can keep watching
It'll
no
be
matter
worth
what.
a lot in like 50
Yeah.
years. Just think about it.
But like something like The Old Guard, like let's say 50 years from now, which I don't want to think about, but 50 years from now, that movie might, unless it's been moved to another service, Netflix could just get rid
Honestly,
of it.
I could see that happening.
Yeah, like it could just be delisted. It could be seen as old content. We don't need that anymore. It's already been used up. But then theoretically, there would be no more copies of that movie anymore. You wouldn't be able to access it anymore. And
That's crazy.
it's a sad reality for a lot of stuff, especially stuff that hasn't ever even come out, because there have been plenty of movies and shows that they get made and they don't even get released. They just kind of get used as a tax
It's-
write-off.
It's sad too, cause that almost reminds me of like music. Now, luckily, trends have kind of brought like records back in and stuff, but like music is kind of getting the same way. Like, not as many artists are coming out with CDs.
Yeah.
Or like, yeah, I guess that is really your only option, a record or a CD.
The nice thing about music is there does seem to like the scene around physical media for music still seems to be pretty strong, whereas with movies
I think
and
it
shows,
kind of got brought back though, because like when I was a kid, not that that was like that long ago or anything, but
Yeah.
like I didn't know what a record was, even though it's older than when I was a
Yeah.
kid, if that
Mhm.
makes sense. Like now it's like trending again.
Yeah.
So like I would love to see like DVDs and stuff like for movies trend again, but I
Yeah.
don't think that's ever gonna happen.
They won't.
Yeah,
Because it's not like as accessible. Not
Exactly.
accessible, like
But yet there is a CD player, and like I'm looking at like 2 right now.
Some of these are very old. Not some of these are a
Yeah.
bit old.
I
But yeah,
remember when computers like
Had
laptops had the CD
CDs.
port. Now they
Yes.
don't.
well, now they got to keep getting thinner, so now
Or
they
in your
don't. So they don't need
car,
to include
you
that.
could put the CDs in your car,
Yeah,
like on the back of your like mom's like seat, like driver's seat.
Because like
now you
the
can't anymore.
idea of a streaming service for us when we were kids, like that's not a thing. Like I still remember when Netflix was only DVDs you get in the mail, and that was already the most amazing thing.
Yes,
Because
I
unlike
kinda forgot
Blockbuster,
about that.
you didn't have to return them by a certain date. It was amazing. It was amazing.
Our Redbox films were always getting turned
And
in
now
late.
Netflix doesn't even do that anymore. I'm pretty sure they have fully canceled that service. It is only
Online.
streaming. Yeah, it is only their online streaming
The
service.
first
sad.
time I watched Pitch Perfect was on a Redbox DVD.
Nice.
Isn't that
Pitch
crazy?
Perfect.
Because like now that movie is so like everybody loves it. It's so trendy now. You can watch it for free on TikTok. Like, but like the first time I watched it was on a Redbox,
Yeah.
and I'm not even old, and like that makes me feel old.
All right, so obviously we've gone a bit broad compared to just talking about the movie, but ultimately, what did you guys come away from your experience of watching The Old Guard, but also like this conversation that we've kind of talked about? Like, has it made you maybe appreciate the movie a little bit more, or like maybe look
Yeah.
at it and maybe other movies on Netflix in a different context, that kind of thing?
Yeah, it just makes me appreciate Netflix more. Not Netflix, but like movies more in general, because like you never know when's the last time you'll watch a movie.
Yeah, because like you really like this movie, and yeah, think about it 20
Yeah,
years
it's
from
kinda
now. What if
scary.
it just gets written off?
Right. I think from this conversation and the movie, I kind of took away the fact that Netflix kind of put this image in my head that they were like cringy and like did all this other stuff. This movie kind of brought me back and gave me a little higher viewing on Netflix. So like
Okay.
honestly, I guess it's good I watched this because I never thought of this as a Netflix original until you said something.
Yeah.
And now that like I know it is, I guess my opinions are a little bit more nicer towards like Netflix originals.
Well, that's good.
So
then.
I
That's
guess this
good then.
benefits Netflix on my part.
Yeah, exactly. All right. That was our Havenscope podcast about The Old Guard, Netflix, streaming movies in general, and the fear of basically physical media going away completely, which we already kind of are staring down the barrel of. But I'd like to thank Alyssa and Rochelle for being on this week. We'll be back again with about a documentary series called Quiet on Set, actually, which will be an interesting new thing to look at.
Quiet on set.
Quiet on Set.
Bye bye.
All right. Thank you, everyone.